And we are live on the usual podcast. Michael D. Shaw is here. I'm Charles Moscowitz. I'm also live on TikTok for at least a while. Before we go further, I just want to warn my TikTok followers that I usually get a warning from TikTok pretty early in the broadcast, in which case the thing will be shut down. So you'll suddenly it'll be gone. And if you want to continue to watch or you want to get an archive or a podcast of the show, you can go to Charles Moskowitz at Rumble. TikTok is still very touchy when it comes to censorship, but I think the issue we're talking about today is too big for even them to censor, Mike, and that is
Oh yeah.
the corruption that I think the locus of which has been Minneapolis. It involves really what I would describe as traditional mob activity by a new immigrant group. In this case, it's the Somalis. Um, the difference between the Somali activity and mob activity in the past by immigrant groups such as newly arriving Italians, the Irish in Boston, the Jews, and more recently Russians and some Asian groups, is that those mobsters and those syndicates generally focused on vice and marketing it and using strong arm tactics to extort money from private companies. The difference between them and most of them have been broken. I mean, here in Boston, they finally broke the back of the mob with the arrest of Whitey Bulger and Jerry Angiulo back in the 1990s. And that was done, by the way, with the excellent support of the Boston Globe and the mainstream media, which did its job back then and investigated these kinds of crimes and did so by sending reporters out very courageously who actually did the work that's required to do that. That's different now. Now you have a complete, either they've fallen down on the job because they're not competent or because they have a political agenda that probably goes back to the election of 2000 and even before. But either way, the reason why you have citizen reporters like Nick Shirley and a growing number of others going out and doing the kind of work that used to be done and that is supposed to be done by the media is because the media isn't doing it. It's just that simple. And
well, not only that, CNN was attacking Nick Shirley.
Oh yeah. They're calling him a white supremacist, right?
Yeah.
And well, the governor of Minnesota is calling him a white supremacist. That's how they're playing this thing. They're saying, well, it's because of the Somalis are not white. That's what this is all about. I don't think that's working for them. I think it's backfiring on them. The fact is that Nick Shirley, whatever he may be, he's not a white supremacist, by the way. And I heard him interviewed. He's actually one of these guys who he said he's a practicing Mormon, and as such, he's untouchable because he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't even drink coffee. I mean, no sex out of marriage. These guys, the Mormons are very kind of straight and narrow. And so they're not going to get anything on him unless maybe they want to look at some high school prank he might have pulled. But the point is that he's untouchable. And as are a lot of the people getting into this. And even if he weren't, it doesn't matter. He is going out.
What was the motivation? Was it that, oh no, black people, or was it, well, wait a minute, we're supposed to be in the media, and this little schmuck with a $2 camera is out doing a better job than us?
I think it's both. I mean, he's going out, he's showing up the media by knocking on doors. He got a list that's available to the public of daycare centers and how much loot they've been taking over not just this year, but over multiple years, totaling up to upwards of billions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
He goes out there with his cameraman, knocks on the door. You find these places are in these seedy office buildings. No one in their right mind would have their kid go to these places, putting that aside. I mean, but there are no children. There's no evidence of a daycare center, no playground, nothing but these locked doors and with little signs on them with weird names of daycare centers.
Yeah,
And,
Quality Leering Center. That
yeah,
was
Leering Center, yes, which is the ultimate, kind of representative of what this is about. It's just, it's almost too good that they found that. And there's no one there. These are during business hours. No one's there. And in the few cases where someone was there, either they acknowledged that there was no children, they'd never seen children, or they slammed the door in his face. And the whole thing has blown up nationally, and it's now spread to other states. It's Ohio, Maine, soon in Massachusetts if they come
well,
up.
the state of Washington.
Yeah.
They found it, but maybe there's a larger issue here. Okay, I'm going to go off the reservation for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Somalis are a front for the political operation that's making the real money on this thing. Okay.
Right.
I would go on a limb and say the Somalis are too stupid to have figured all this out on their own. And they're simply the front for some Mr. Big. But even more than that, if you take the global view on the war on poverty in general, it's pretty clear that it was a scam to benefit politicians through NGOs and so on,
right,
for the simple reason that poverty was not defeated, right? So my question is, yeah, they're going to bust a few of these miserable Somalis, but is it going to get any higher than that?
I think you're absolutely right. We've talked in the past about how the so-called war on poverty, which was launched in the 60s, has been, what is it, $80 trillion? And it's basically,
I think it's only 27 trillion, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically funded these massive webs of liberal left-wing interest groups, NGOs who have sent the money all over the world to fund color revolutions and terrorism and friends and overthrows of governments. It's lined the pockets of every leftist cause under the sun, which is why these things are so successful, given the fact that they don't have any organic popularity.
Right.
They have, the Somali thing is, as you say, it's like just a symptom. It's a tip of the iceberg with regard to a much bigger scandal, which is probably why they're going to throw them under the bus. But the scandal itself could begin to expose this inherent thing, because there are all these other scandals that are breaking. There's, besides the more specific Somali angle, which, by the way, the Somalis, again, as opposed to the old mobsters of the days of the Jews and the Italians, they're scamming the government. They're not scamming, they're not pushing some, prostitution or drug stuff. And they're sending the money overseas in many cases back to Somalia, where a lot of it may end up in the pockets of terrorist groups like Al Shabaab. But
there are reports now, and it's, I guess I wouldn't shove it on the bandwagon, but even so, there are TSA officers who claim that for years they've seen huge hordes of cash being air freighted to Somalia.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Going back.
And the other thing is that especially in Minneapolis, the state of Minnesota created these gigantic voting blocks,
right,
where you could get 150,000 votes. You saw that Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, kowtowing to these people.
Oh, yeah.
You see the lieutenant governor of the state of Minnesota dressing up as if
putting on a chador.
Yeah, like the Handmaid's Tale or something.
Oh,
and so, and then it comes back to the media. Where is the media reporting all this bizarre behavior? When does some liberal left-wing female lieutenant governor suddenly become this Islamic trope? How does that occur?
Well, that's what we started talking about. The media is completely in the satchel with this, either through incompetence, which is the more kind of like official answer, but I think it's more ideological. I think that it's
Yeah.
that these people support left wing and democratic causes going all the way back to the war on poverty. This is the whole backbone of this rotten democratic institution in this country that has caused so many social problems, that has fattened its own pockets with upwards of $80 trillion. I mean, this whole industry that is there to address poverty is basically paying itself and perpetrating poverty and institutionalizing poverty while they put most, probably like 80% of the money in their own pockets as they manage it. So you have now finally enough of a kind of a critical mass with this Somali situation, I think, and with the citizen journalists like Nick Shirley and others who are doing an end run around the mainstream media and their cover ups, that everything is sort of converging in favor of finally beginning to expose what, again, I would claim is the biggest scandal in American history. Now, we already seen, besides the social agencies that are being scammed willingly and as part of a conspiracy, frankly, you have originally, with the election of Trump, the exposure of USAID and how that was a scam to send billions of dollars to these NGOs, the unaccountable, international oriented, mob like groups that basically put the money in their pocket and then fund revolutions. And now you have, a huge Medicaid scandal. How many of these people are collecting Medicaid and knowingly, and they're not even citizens? That's coming out of the pockets of taxpayers. You have the SNAP scandal. How
Yeah.
many people are collecting food money that are supposed to feed the poor? I thought the left cared about that, right? And is going into their pockets so they can get fatter and basically. Oh, I did. TikTok. No, we're still good. I think that's something from them. No, I'm okay. So far, so good, TikTok. I don't know. Did we mention? All right, anyway. Um, so it goes down very deep layers of corruption. And I think that they're kind of lance the boil. I mean, this is like they can't they can't get around this. And basically, as we enter this new year, the Democratic Party and all of their fellow travelers and camp followers, they are going through a huge effort primarily to cover everything up. 21 states, for example, including Massachusetts, are being sued by the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, headed up by Harmeet Dillon, who was really a goat. I mean, she's amazing, for turning over, which used to be a conventional thing to do, turning over their voter rolls for inspection so there can be verification as to whether or not the registered voter is alive and is a resident of that state. 21 states are refusing to do it. So that's a big cover up, including Massachusetts. I would think that we would have in Massachusetts somebody run for office and sue the state themselves to get that done. You have other major cover ups where they are not releasing information. They're dragging their feet in terms of discovering. I think Minnesota now is probably going to start to try to cover up this mess. And the entire zeitgeist of the Democratic Party is going to be to try to keep a lid on everything until they can be in a position where maybe they could win or steal the midterm election in November. And that's pretty much what we're going to be up against between now and then. It's going to be a race to try to expose the corruption and bring people to justice versus this very major effort to cover things up. We could go into what's going on in Fulton County, Georgia right now. I mean, I don't know, TikTok may not want that, but 440 unconfirmed ballots were cast in the 2020 election. That's public testimony now that vindicates everything that Rudy Giuliani talked about with regard to Fulton County and President Trump talked about. That's covered up. I mean, all these cover-ups that we're going to be up against, and I don't know if we're going to be able to pull it off. The other thing that worries me, and I see this as a trend, from these recent special elections, the ones that put Mamdani in power in New York, that you look at those elections in New Jersey and in Virginia, where they elected Democratic governors, the Democrats are voting, they're getting out and they're voting, and they don't care who the candidate is. You had this attorney general candidate in Virginia who called for the death of his Republican opponent and his family, that they be tortured. I mean, this is really a...
No, but that was okay because he was black.
No, I don't think he is black. You're talking
Yes. Yes.
No, are you talking about Jones?
Yes.
No, he's not black.
Well, we can check that, but
We can check that. No, he's not. He's as white as anyone. He's not. He was given a pass because he's a Democrat, and they're going to vote for anyone who is going to be...
Okay, well, who are these people that are voting?
Well, I mean, the actual people that are voting, besides the votes, I just think that there's been a decision rendered that anybody who's going to stop Trump is going to get elected. They don't care who they are. As I said, they elected this guy in Virginia who, under normal circumstances, would have been knocked off the ballot for what he was into. But he was elected because they're getting out, and they're getting out. They're going to vote. They're so demented in their hatred of Trump that they're going to get out and vote and try to reinstall the Democrats. And they are motivated. They've got infrastructure. They've got all this money pouring in from these corrupt sources. And they've got George Soros, and they've got all the rest. And they're going to do everything they can to stop Trump. And I think that it's a very dangerous situation.
Well, it's dangerous, but then I guess that maybe what you're looking at is generations of corruption, generations of the institutions brainwashing people.
Yeah.
Because if you view liberals now in the context of knowing what we know, you begin to see that these are people that, and you see it in all these YouTube debates with all these people going around, whether it's Caitlin Bennett or people like her, where they'll confront some liberal and they just can't defend any of their positions at all, which indicates that, it's like we talked about months ago, this sort of Model UN Ethel Rosenberg thing, that at the age of 6, they were given these positions and they kept them ideologically without having any idea what they're about.
Okay, let me just interrupt briefly. The TikTok has sent me the warning. So I just want to let TikTok followers know that I'm now going to be shutting down TikTok. You can continue to watch the program at Rumble, but whatever was said, it's censored by TikTok. So TikTok, thank you for joining me this afternoon, and hope to see you soon. Okay.
Well, you were on for what, almost 20 minutes. So
I guess so. Whatever. So much for TikTok.
Well, here's the other thing that's coming out, which is going to be, I think, to our advantage. There are various postings, and you're going to see more accurate ones as the year plays out, that if they eliminated all the fraud from the U.S. government budget, there would be no income tax necessary for people making up to $300,000 or whatever the number is.
Can you imagine what you're saying should be the number one campaign issue for the Republicans? The fact is that even if they got rid of this fraud that's being perpetrated by the Somalis, and that is only what we know about so far.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that money going back into the economy with maybe a portion of it actually helping real people who are dealing with the social issues that they're there to address. There's probably maybe 20%, maybe less, and the rest of it going back into the economy where it could be used to reduce the income tax. You're absolutely right. This has been brought up with regard to the 20 million illegal aliens who
Yeah.
were let into the country by Biden. What are they doing? They're being subsidized in apartments, which raises the cost of rent and mortgage. They are being given, cards for welfare for, who knows how much money. Even Massachusetts, even Governor Maura Healey, the leftist
Okay,
governor.
but where was the objection of the other side? I mean, here's where it may backfire on Republicans. All right. All this fraud's going on. Well, where were you, smart guy?
Well, look, I mean, I think that some of the rhinos are probably a part of the problem here. I mean, the governor of Ohio is a rhino Republican who recently said, when the Somali scandal broke with regard to Columbus, he's like, well, that's part of the system. He says, what can you
Yeah.
do? That's the way it goes. So, it's not really even I mean, the Republicans.
But imagine even saying that.
Yeah, I mean, the Republicans don't come off so well here either, of course. And this is I think that it's more of an issue. I've heard Steve Turley talk about this. That basically it's not so much the old left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. It's more of an international movement of the people versus the elites. The elites, whether they be whatever label, and we mentioned so the late sociologist Christopher Lasch talk about a good article that the New York Times actually republished, where he kind of foreshadowed the arrival of the Trump movement. This is before Trump. I think he passed away before that. But
Yeah.
and he said, look, what we have now, as opposed to what has been the case over the past many centuries, which has been a struggle between the people versus the elites. It's now the elites who are fighting against the people. They are the ones who are using mechanisms to retain and advance their power by electronic means, such as election fraud and controlling of voting machines, basically canceling elections like they did recently in Romania. They're trying to do it in Germany. They're trying to control and stop the populist movement, which actually includes former leftists, and it includes, like, it's kind of a coalition of people on various sides. It's a different realignment in society, and Trump's the advent of President Trump and the MAGA movement is the very manifestation of that movement, and it's what they're struggling to stop. So it's really an elitist move, kind of bureaucracy, sort of a, what Steve Bannon calls the administrative state, working in collusion with multinational corporations and central bankers and other baskets of deplorables, as Hillary Clinton might call it, right? That are trying to retain their power by use of power, money, electronics, AI, all of it. And that's really what we're up against. But but having said that, we have to support President Trump, because if they win back the House, it's over. They're going to start impeaching him every other week. They're going to once again start to deplatform people, debank people, put people back in prison for nothing. It's going to be ugly. I mean, I would urge people to read Eric Trump's book. The he just really, which he talks about what happened to that family during the period when Trump was no longer allowed in office. And that's going to happen. If that can happen to Trump and his family, which are people who are, well-to-do and powerful and have influence, then they can just do that to anybody. So this election is that important, which is why we have to hold our nose and support people like that corrupt Republican governor from Ohio and other, rhinos, with the hope that the MAGA movement will regain a majority of those Republicans within the Republican circles.
Well, how about taking this tack, which isn't discussed that often? How come there's never any consequences for any of this stuff? Okay, I mean, let's start small. Rachel Maddow made a career out of, there's a great scandal. This is it. This is a bombshell. And Trump is that. Okay. Right. She was a blithering idiot. Nothing happens to her.
No.
She gets her $50 million a year. But I mean, in every walk of life, people screw up and there's no penalty. Claudine Gay, yes, finally gets kicked out as the president of Harvard, but she retains the $900,000 salary being a professor or whatever the hell she was a professor of.
Yeah, she teaches one class like Elizabeth Warren used to do.
Okay, Bob Iger presided over the destruction of the biggest entertainment company in America. Why does he still have a job? What do you have to do to get fired as a CEO?
You have to be a supporter of Trump to get fired as a CEO.
Okay. So
no, this is what they've been talking about, the two-tiered system of justice. This is the illuminated internationalist establishment that basically helps each other and that is probably taking oaths to secret societies, even as innocuous as the Masons. And I mean, this is like kind of a sidebar story, but I don't know if you noticed that. I think it's in England or the United Kingdom that the police are now required to become Masons. Now, why is that significant? Because they take an oath of loyalty to their lodge over their country. I'm sorry to put it that way. Now, I know that most people who are into the Masonic lodges have no idea what this is about, and they're just there because they want to have business contacts or they social contacts. Fine. My family had this. My grandfather was a big Mason. I mean, his funeral, there was a Masonic ceremony. But they don't really understand the implications here, which is that if you're a policeman taking an oath, those policemen are not going to prosecute Islamic rape gangs because they're all going to agree that they can't do that. I mean, if you have judges taking this oath, they're not going to prosecute. They're going to let off the hook defendants who give the same signals, the hand signal. And it's a very corrupting factor. I'm bringing.
Well, right, and there seem to be no consequences except in the case of, because you mentioned these elections, right? Winston Sears in Virginia was not exactly MAGA. Okay, right. Let's be honest.
Right. Okay.
This, what was it, Pennsylvania situation, same deal. Okay, these were rhinos.
Yeah.
I think in the case of Winston Sears, she wasn't so much a rhino as she was afraid to be too full-blooded Republican.
Right. Yeah.
Afraid of the Northern Virginia left-wing contingent. And here again, and I may have to write a piece on this, that I don't think any of these liberals actually believe this stuff as much as it was drummed into their heads at a young age. And I think the best explanation for this absurd interview of this CNN woman, of Nick Shirley, where it's as obvious as the day is long that this is all corrupt. And she talks about, well, why are you surprised that the front door is locked? It's these stupid questions to try to, catch the guy. At what point do you look inward and say, hey, our network is going to go out of business because everybody thinks we're idiots, but I have to die on the hill of being this mindless liberal white female? I mean, at what point does someone break the mold?
I don't know. I mean, we've talked about this. You have people in the media. I know I harp on it, but here in Boston, Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan, they know goddamn well that the 2020 election was stolen. Now I can say this because we're not on TikTok, but they will never ever say so publicly. Not just because they know that if they did, they would lose their jobs because their NPR station is very wedded to this idea of demonizing anybody who questions the election in a way that's very similar to how that would work in a Soviet system. You don't question an election, or else you go to a gulag.
Okay, but then,
But more broadly, they agree with it. They agree with it. They're on board. They're fully conscious, fully witting participants in this fraud, and they know it. And I can tell they know it. I know them.
How do you live with yourself, though? Drugs?
I've met Jim Braude a few times. I know that he's fully conscious. They're demonic. That's how they live with themselves. They're all going to go to hell. I mean, I don't know that, but you know what I mean? They're all like possessed of this. You know, it's a combination of ambition to get ahead in their field and to get money. It's financial. They want to get their fat face on television. They want to get paid, and that they're on board with this conspiracy. Every freaking one of them. They all are. There are very few that have broken ranks. I mean, Catherine Herridge broke ranks. There are a few. She's actually talked about recently, done an interview. She was a major figure at CBS, right?
Yeah.
She was fired. And now she's done an interview talking about how CBS has covered up the Hunter Biden laptop. Okay. So she's a truth teller. There are a handful of them out there, very few. And the ones that are out there either have been completely demonized, like Glenn Greenwald and a couple of others, Ben Swan, who talked about and did some reporting on Pizzagate. He was not, some right winger. I mean, he was basically working for, I think, NBC. I mean, at the time, who was it? Liz Crocken, another one, big, journalist school, graduated from with a degree in journalism, worked for a mainstream station, and simply reported on it a thing that was not allowed. She probably didn't even know it wasn't allowed at the time, but they found out and they were blackballed. They disappeared. But there are still a few of them who are brave enough to step up. And I'm hoping in this coming year, there's going to be more, because there are a growing number of these citizen reporters like Nick Shirley who go out and get hard evidence. They can say whatever they want to them.
This is great, Chuck. So for all the complaints people have about, I'm doing this for clicks, here was a case where it worked, right?
Yeah.
No one ever heard of Nick Shirley.
Right.
Before this thing, whether he was, quote, doing it for clicks or just doing it out of a sense of justice, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Right?
It doesn't matter. They're all doing it for clicks, including the big networks. They're all trying to get, that's just part of the business. It's baked in.
Yeah.
If you don't have viewers, you'll be gone. So yeah, I mean, is he making money from it? I hope so.
Yeah.
He's probably making money from YouTube. Why not? Is that a sin? This is America. Let him make money. I hope he makes $1 million. And that'll only encourage other people. And there are other people now coming out who are doing this kind of work. You had a couple of these street reporters, and we talked about this a few months back during the so-called No Kings rally and some of these other crazy anti-Trump and pro-Hamas rallies, who went around with their cameras and they documented the fact that these same people were showing up in multiple cities, and they got them on camera. They were in Chicago, then a few days later they were in St. Louis, and then a few days later they were in Washington, D.C. Who paid for that? How did that happen? And so they found out who they were, and they found out that they are working for or are owners of, a part of, these phony baloney groups, some of the same groups that are getting money. The Somalis are similar to that, probably getting money from George Soros, probably getting money from USAID and from the government. And they're professional agitators. They use these apps to kind of program these so-called protests. They go, at 12 o'clock at so-and-so location, we're going to be here, come on down.
Yeah.
And they get people to go. I mean, it's top-down, coordinated people, and it's being revealed and uncovered by these citizen reporters who are going out in the field with their simple, their smartphones, like what you and I are doing now. They're just using we have a laptop, a mic, and a camera, and we're doing a program, and we can discuss issues that would otherwise not be allowed by the mainstream media. So the mainstream media has been rendered completely irrelevant at this point. And
now, do they realize that, or do they have such a sense of superiority, and they're looking down their nose until the point that they will disappear? I mean, what is still hard for me to understand, maybe because I'm rational, is at the very moment when the CNN broad is interviewing Nick Shirley, does she not realize that she's becoming a parody of herself?
I don't think they do realize it. I think they're getting worse. They're doubling down. I think that, just another great reporter, Chaya Radkin, what's her name? She's the head of the Libs of TikTok. She's an Orthodox Jewish woman, a young woman, who unveiled certain things that the mainstream media tried to cover up. Like, for example, to bring this up, she ran a video that was on the Massachusetts Children's Hospital website showing this doctor talking about doing sex change on children,
right.
As in like 2 years old, young children. And this woman looked like, Miss Marjorie from Romper Room, so fresh-faced and innocent, and she's smiling and talking about how wonderful this is, and we're going to make people happy, and we're going to be all great, and and she simply took that video and put it up on her YouTube channel. And it blew up in their face because people saw that, and they are, Mike, come on back. Let's see where are we, Mike. No, Mike.
Hey, yeah,
a little technical problem. Did I say something that got? I don't know.
Boy, that was bad. That was a black helicopter moment.
I guess so. But anyways, the point is that she got that video out there, and it created a scandal in Boston, and Children's Hospital pulled that video down, denied that it ever was up there. And you had this corrupt district attorney, Rachel Rollins, who was later convicted of embezzlement, claim that this was a right-wing conspiracy, and this is white supremacists doing this, and this smearing children. All of a sudden, Children's Hospital got death threats, which I don't believe. Who was doing that? There's never proof. Oh, they're going to hurt children, really? Anyway, the point is that it led to some reform because Children's Hospital backed out, and at least officially.
That whole issue now is coming to the fore, and there's all kinds of stories because I've followed this from the beginning. First of all, the American Academy of Pediatrics is a horrible, horrible organization. Yeah. They've been in the forefront of the kids that need to get 300 vaccines a day. That was that. And they were all in favor of the gender affirming surgery.
So-called. Okay.
So, exactly. So now
we get a lot of money for it, by the way, because it's a problem under the Biden regime. You had that guy dressing up as a woman who was sending who knows how many tens of billions of dollars to hospitals to do for each of these surgeries that is done. So there's a lot of money involved. The insurance companies are on board. This is a financial agenda, putting aside the fact that it's the crown jewel of the left, going back to the French Revolution to change human nature. They're literally trying to change a person's sex at an early age. I mean, I can't think of anything more ghoulish or despicable. I never thought that things could get this bad. Who ever thought that this could happen? I mean, oh my God. I mean, I was talking to an ultra liberal friend of mine when this story first started breaking. I think it must have been about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I told her about this, and she was agreed with me. She was horrified. I can't believe this is happening. They're taking testicles, removing them out of young boys. I mean, this is insane. About 3 months later, I ran into the same person, and she was on board with it. Somehow.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, somehow the word got out that this is the new leftist cause.
Wait. I think you told me that story, and that was the inspiration for the Ethel Rosenberg and the Model UN article. I think that's what it was. Because now, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to believe this. Whoop! Okay, now
Exactly.
I'm going.
Somehow they sent out like some kind of a gamma ray which stimulated the chip that they've implanted in the back of their skulls, and it's sort of like zzz, zzz, and before you know it, they're all marching, goose stepping along. Everything is out the window. So, but I mean, I'm bringing this up to get back to our subject. That Chaya Rakin was another one of these brave citizen journalists who did nothing more than simply report on these things. Didn't have an agenda. She's not right wing in particular. Not that it would matter if she were. It's just, citizen journalists. I remember the left used to talk, we're championing this back in the day. Remember, I think it was like this leftist magazine came up with the 10 most suppressed stories of the year. They no longer do that. They're no longer talking about that. Russ Winter. What's his name? He's like a big left-wing journalist online who spent a decade exposing the FBI corruption. He won't, and I had him on my show. He won't talk to me now because he's on board with it. Since Comey and all of them, I mean, they're all trying to get Trump. So that's twisted everything around. And now they're just, RFK, big hero of the left, who used to do a broadcast with Sam Cedar, a left-wing podcaster, for years, championing the very exact same issues he's getting into now. Except back then it was great. Now it's like public enemy. It's just,
Well, I thought it was really scandalous how the entire Kennedy family turns on him.
Oh, it's hard. Yeah, it's just a disgrace, and it's
which is really pathetic, because if you look at the resources that the Kennedy family had, the actual limited success that really occurred in actuality, and yes, the young death of Caroline Kennedy's daughter,
of course,
and so on, who almost to her dying breath was condemning Bobby Kennedy for reasons that she could not articulate, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's sad.
And so,
I mean, I think we talked about this, that RFK's wife, who's a liberal and who's an actress, they were at Ethel Kennedy's funeral, and Joe Kennedy, the oldest son, who's always been a scumbag, by the way, when he was congressman from Massachusetts, always a jerk, not well respected even by the left. He got up and he started to curse his brother while he was eulogizing his mother at church in front of the priest. I mean, this is how low they've sunk. It was just awful. I mean, this is like this family has really gone down into the gutter. It's just horrible. But anyway,
it was all happening. If you follow the news media, you could always tell there's always a formula here. When they did the obit of this Tatiana Schlossberg, and they said environmental lawyer.
Right.
Okay. Here's the thing. My son is an attorney. I've known a jillion attorneys in my time. Nobody uses an adjective with an attorney, except under very rare circumstances.
I know. What is an environmental lawyer? I've not.
I mean, M&A attorney. No one says that. Slip and fall attorney. No one says that. Except
if anyone can say they were an environmental lawyer, I would say RFK would be an environmental lawyer. I mean, if you're going to use that sort of a subgrant.
Yeah. So it's really, I don't know whether it's demonic, maybe it is, but at some point, do you stand for anything? Is the most important thing, as you are dying literally, to still condemn your relative?
Yeah.
It's
Joe Kennedy the third or the fourth, who was congressman from my district here for a couple of terms. Not the brightest bulb in the chandelier, as it were, but at the same time, not a bad guy. I've run into him a couple of times like at Star Market. You know, he's not a bad person. And I had some back and forths with him by email where I said, look, you have this incredible legacy of the Kennedy family. I mean, you have this opportunity to do something different and to strike out and make a difference in the world and take a couple of stands. Are you really going to just stick with this cookie cutter, old, outdated, left wing liberal thing that would be rejected by your grandfather and great uncle had they lived? You know, and he never really broke out of it. You know, he was just a cat's paw for the left. He was like a rubber stamp. They just vote along with what they're told. There was nothing new, nothing initiated. You know, in Massachusetts, it's particularly bad in terms of the level of corruption. Now you have this left-wing Governor Healy, who lesbian, by the way, not that that matters, but she, the $2.5 billion deficit. I mean, she's already spent $2.5 billion more than the state has. No one's asking, where did the money go? Why is this, what is this? Has this helped anyone? And the state refuses to have an audit of its expenses. The fact is that most of that money went to help illegal aliens.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
And house them, feed them, clothe them, give them stipends.
Okay, but I mean, think about this, because I don't really have a logical explanation. All right. What was the reasoning behind all this massive support of illegals? Okay. What is the constituency for that?
I mean, I don't think it was popular with anyone. I mean, I don't know.
So why do it?
Because the Biden regime was bent on doing this. I mean, they swung open the borders and they let in 20 million people, and they flew them to different cities, including Greater Boston. They flew them in. I mean, most of these people were not families. I mean, most of them were single men. Most of them were able-bodied. Most of them were not poor people. Most of them were African or Asian. They came from Arab countries. They came from China. I don't know is this, not to mention, Mexico. I don't know is this supposed to be some kind of a virtue?
No. I think what's going on here is that, you've heard of the replacement theory, but this is even more cynical. Okay. I mean, replacement theory might be fine. We'll bring in these families and so on. But think about this in an evil way for a second. You're bringing in mostly males. Okay. They're going to be impressionable, stupid American females that are going to marry these guys, further diluting whatever the American character is. And this was all part of the plan. It's just insidious, it's demonic, but people were so gelded by the fact, oh no, they'll call me racist, that you couldn't speak out.
The Kalergi plan, right? In Europe, which Kalergi was half Japanese, half German. I don't know a lot about it. I don't know its tie into anti-Semitism. That I don't know, but I mean, I know that I've heard anti-Semites talk about this. But he wanted to mongrelize the races of Europe. That was his agenda, just like his own family, like himself, as if this is some kind of a virtue. Now, look, I mean, Europe is a whole different story. I mean, can they explain why they let in millions of Africans and Muslims? I don't think so. I mean, this is that now it's kind of a crusade in reverse. Is there a virtue to this? Is this supposed to be humanitarian? I mean, the Arab and Islamic countries are wealthy. They're vast. They've got oil. They've got resources. They've got minerals. Why don't I mean they? Why are they needing to come to Europe? I mean, the conventional definition, and this was actually discussed on my program years ago before I was recording, where I interviewed John Peterson, who was the head of the New York Federal Reserve Bank and who had a book out at the time about demographics. And he predicted this. He said, Europe is an aging population. It's a welfare state. People in Europe want to figure out a way to continue their welfare benefits so they can enjoy their 2 months of paid leave and their free health care, much of it, by the way, subsidized by the American taxpayer. And so they're going to let in people from the Muslim countries with the assumption that they're going to take these jobs and pay taxes and do the work that they no longer want to do.
And they're going to play off the collective guilt.
And also they don't have the children any longer. There's not a younger generation. The populations of Italy and Germany and France is dropping. So they need to replace that drop with these younger people coming in from Africa. That was a justification. But the point is that it really hasn't worked out, even under that scenario, because a large percentage of these people don't work. And some of them are doing probably what the Somalis are doing in Minneapolis. I mean, they're just scamming the system further and sending the money back to the home country where it could be used to kill Jews and to blow up, buildings.
Well, they were denying their own history. It's probably a radical thing to even say that Western civilization was essentially founded by the church.
Of course, right? Yeah.
So I don't think any rational person is going to disagree with that, as much as now it becomes an emotional reaction. But if you bring in people that are largely aren't Christian, it's going to change the fabric of society. And I think it has a lot to do with self-hatred. It has a lot to do with the welfare state. Maybe this was some grand plan after World War II. Well, we didn't really kill enough people in World War II. We have to find a way to really screw things up even more.
They replaced the Jews with Muslims, basically.
Yeah, how's that working out?
Yeah, I mean, and look, the Jews are an alien element in Europe, but the point is at least the Jews were grandfathered in. They were there right from the beginning. They were there even before Christianity.
Right.
So, and they kind of had their place, but they weren't like a threat to the Christian ethos. In fact, I would argue that they supported it mostly, and they helped, maintain it in a lot of ways. That's another subject, but
that's largely true, actually.
Right, but the point is that they've been now replaced by Muslims who, whatever happened to the Crusades? The Crusades defeated Islam, starting with Charles Martel and the Battle of Poitiers in France, where they stopped the advance of Muslim forces who had almost completely conquered Spain and who were pushing into the heartland of France. Then it took 500 years to push them back and keep pushing them back at great sacrifice until eventually, in 1492, the Islamic Caliphate lost its final foothold in Spain. Now they're letting them back in. Whatever happened to the Battle of Lepanto, where the Ottoman Empire, it's the largest naval engagement in history, where you had the combined forces of all the Christian and Catholic states. I think it was Catholic at the time.
Yes.
Meet them off the coast of Malta and defeat them at great sacrifice. Or the Battle of Vienna.
That's the famous feast of Our Lady of the Rosary.
Yeah. That's right.
But here's the question for you as a historian. Why are the Crusades bad, but the Muslim conquest of Europe is okay?
Well, because now you're not allowed to talk about Crusades. I mean, the Battle of Vienna. I mean, Vienna was under siege by Ottoman forces, and then you had John Sobieski, the Polish generals show up with a huge army and engage in a massive campaign, probably one of the biggest in history, to defeat the forces of Ottoman Turkey. And then they started to push them back over centuries until eventually they were able to regain the Balkans at the end of World War One. So, the Crusades was an ongoing process, and it's now been completely reversed, and no one says anything about it, as you say. And they saved Western civilization by saving Christendom. It's just that simple. Thomas Jefferson, he defeated the Barbary pirates. It was America's first military engagement overseas because they were seizing American boats, enslaving American men, impressing them into their forces. Jefferson had a Quran, which is American Muslims now like to say, oh, this shows that he was enlightened, right? And you have Mandami swearing his oath as mayor of New York on a Quran. No, he had the Quran because he wanted to understand the enemy. It's like somebody having Mein Kampf. He wanted to know what these people were about. And there's an interview where the American ambassador to, I think, Algiers or one, the Barbary states, that he recorded an interview with the head of the Bey of that country, who stated it plainly. We're on a jihad. We want to defeat you. We want to have world Allah, world of Islam. I mean, he was very open about it. So America was involved in the Crusades back then, and it's sort of an ongoing battle. I mean, I would again point to Professor Huntington, Samuel Huntington of Harvard, was a sociologist who wrote a book about the Islam's bloody borders. If you look at any part of the world, whether it be Africa, in Nigeria, where they're slaughtering Christians in church, whether you look at all the way to the Philippines, where they're slaughtering Catholics in a predominantly Catholic country from their base in the southern island, and right up through Thailand and India and Central Asia, every border where the Islamic caliphate or the Islamic countries meet non-Islamic countries, you have war, you have attacks. And it's probably responsible for a large percentage of the wars in the world today. And then if you have an Islamic minority in a country, you have subversion. It's that simple. It works just like communism used to work. They're very polite, they're nice, they play ball until they reach a majority. And then they start imposing Sharia law, and the jihad becomes exposed.
Why is this is such a difficult concept for Western society to appreciate? Is it because we've been so gelded by racial guilt? And by the way, how did that even occur? I don't think you had slaves. I never had slaves.
Right.
Why?
Also, we paid a price for slavery. It was called the Civil War. Something like 600,000 men died fighting that war on both sides. And it was resolved, right? I mean, it was decided slavery is evil. It's been abolished in this country. Why don't they have programs in place? They like to talk about generational wealth. Well, what about putting in programs that would actually expand generational wealth instead of transferring all the money into their own predominantly white pockets?
Yeah.
Like we're finding out now. It's like the war on poverty. Why not have a social security system that actually creates wealth instead of what it does now, which is that the money disappears and goes into the public trough?
Well, I mean, the first indication that it was a scam from day one, besides the fact that you collected 65, but the lifespan was 64, is that I would be in favor of a law that said, okay, you have to put aside X dollars or X percent of your income, and you can do it in all these kind of ways. But no, it was, we will take this from you.
And they're going to keep it.
By the way, and here's the proof, okay? If you make under 15,000 or whatever the number is, you're not paying any federal income tax, but you're still paying Social Security. Explain that to me.
You have to pay Social Security on your Social Security.
Yeah.
It's already been taxed once. President Trump is the first leader who's trying to address this. He is no longer taxing Social Security for people under 50,000 in retirement income.
Yeah.
He has put in place, as of today, the new year, a program where every American child born or naturalized in this country gets $1,000 bank account, which goes into index funds, so it doesn't cost anything, and it accumulates capital over 18 years. And then if you're a friend or family of that child, you can donate money to that fund up to $4,000 as a tax deduction. By the time that child reaches age 18, they can then get access to the funds in three ways. They can either use it to pay for tuition at an accredited institution, or they could use it as a down payment on property, or they can use it as monies to help them start a business. I mean, what a way to reduce generational poverty. I mean, then it continue, or they can just continue to grow it. They can just continue to
Oh,
contribute.
you're right. It's a hell of an idea, which sort of begs the question: why did it take till 2025 for someone to come up with that?
Because it's a scam. Because it's part of this whole, to kind of wrap things back to where we started. It's part of this whole rotten internationalist left-wing illuminated scam of transferring the wealth and the hard-earned production of the American worker and taxpayer into their fat pockets. It has nothing to do with reducing institutional poverty. They could have done that. They could have done it a long time ago if they really wanted to. But instead, they've engaged in these very tricky scam like systems, and they've marketed it to the American people as some kind of a virtue. And that people buy it because of their virtual monopoly over the means of communication in this country. That's all they're exposed to. This is what they believe because this is what they're told. It's this constant drip, drip, drip Chinese water torture of propaganda and lies. Anyway, Mike, what do you have coming up on your Substack?
Well, I mean, you just created a bunch of germs of ideas for me.
Great.
But yeah, and maybe I'll tie it back to one of the articles of mine that actually had a lot of hits, was where we talked about the famous book of 1964 called None Dare Call It Treason.
Yes.
Self-published, sold 7 million copies. Here's the point.
Yes.
Even then, people were wondering what the hell's going on. 7 million, but there was no internet. There was no real means to publicize a self-published book.
Well, all he did was take clippings out of newspapers that were the New York Times, if you know how to read it, it will tell you the truth, but you have to go into the article. They usually save it for the final couple of little paragraphs.
Yeah.
They're buried deep into the paper before they finally tell you what the hell they're talking about. And even then, I mean, I'm just saying it's like, that's all he did, Stormer. He just did clippings of newspapers and he put it all together and ran it. I mean, it's all there. Everything is available. They say, oh, it's a conspiracy. No, it's not it's an open conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of putting it together. And that's what these journalists are doing. That's what Nick Shirley has done. He's taken public documents that are published, which is what journalists are supposed to do. And he's put a couple of little miles on his shoes by going out and finding these places.
It was funny, Chuck. It wasn't even that hard because there were so many of them right in downtown Minneapolis. He didn't have to travel that far.
Oh my! I mean, there's over 200, and some of them, like these, you get these really sketchy-looking office buildings, and there's this one door, and it has 2 or 3 shingles on it. I mean, the whole thing is so rotten, and I don't think they're going to be able to get away from it.
And what's so pathetic is that look at Tim Walz at CNN, and the people try to portray, and it's always the same tired thing. White people.
Yeah, and it's not working. It's not going to work for them. It's it's the same rotten playbook. It's more obviously false than ever. Even if it were true, who cares? Did they steal the money or not? It's like it's a crime. I mean, I don't care if they're white or black. I mean, these are serious felonies. We need convictions. We need people
Look
deported.
at Ilhan Omar's husband took down his website for
30 million.
whatever his NGO is, where she's supposedly now made $30 million on this thing. And
I mean,
I
here
think the
what's her face here in Boston? The one of the squad. I mean,
Presley.
Yeah, Presley. Sure, her husband, who's a convicted con. I mean, he served time for drug dealing. The minute she was elected, he set up a nonprofit. They're worth $4 million. I mean, that's small potatoes compared to. But they started out broke. A lot of these people did. They went. The Clintons went into office. They were broke basically. Now they're worth like up to $300 million. I mean, Obama had no money when he started. He got immediately a book contract, I think, worth $8 million. Who paid that? That's like a payoff. I mean, and now they own that property in Martha's Vineyard on the coast.
Well, I hope that 2026 is a year where all this falls apart. It's certainly about time.
Yeah, not to mention Clinton's daughter. I mean, didn't the USAID pay for her wedding and her mansion? I mean, I think that's kind of public knowledge.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the pieces I wrote some time ago was whatever happened to investigative journalism.
Well, that's what we started talking about, and it's completely in the satchel. It's as I said, I know I keep harping on Jim Browdy because he aggravates me because I listen to him, but he's typical of every city has that. These are people who are just completely in the pocket. They're fully conscious. They're participants. They believe in this. They genuinely hate Trump, and they're socialists. They hate the freedom, the movement toward freedom, and they feel very proud and very proper in their goals of subverting it and covering up anything that may be a problem. So that's what it's about.
Was it really worth it? Maybe you could write a book about this. Was it really worth it that because Nixon brought down Alger Hiss, was it worth it following him 30 years later?
And finally taking him out.
Yeah,
That's how they take a long view. This is the Gramsci's slow march through the institutions. They'll wait a generation before they get their enemy, but they get them. Lenin talked about this in one of his pamphlets: 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Or was it 2 steps back? I don't know. But the point is that, that's how they operate. They'll take a step, then they'll go back. And then this is how they did with the COVID cards, the electronic cards, right? They were put back on that by the Canadian truckers, the brave Canadian truckers. So they pulled it back, but it's still there, and they're going to wait, and it might take another 20 years, but they'll pull it back out. They're not going away. It'll never go away because authoritarianism and this anti-God movement, it goes back to the Garden of Eden. Every generation has to deal with it. Every generation has to expose it, but it will never go away. Not until, God willing, the Messianic age is launched. Anyways, Mike, on that note,
all right.
I'll talk to you next week, and thank you.
All right, sounds good. And Happy New Year, everybody. And let it be a